Actually, I was asked to come over and confer with the admiral who was on the carrier, and said, "We'll send a helicopter for you, pick you up." So they did. And what he wanted us to do, we were traveling, and our track was 100 miles north of some islands that the Chinese were operating from. They had some PT boat type, and it was a pretty heavily infested island with giant Chinese, North Vietnamese and Chinese that were together. But anyway, what we want you to do, we want to send you south off the track. I want you to go to this island and circle it a few thousand yards offshore and see if you can raise a resistance. I said, "What?" And he said, "That's what we want you to do if you're willing." I said, "Absolutely." And I said, "What we're going to do, we're going to have aircraft airborne while you're doing that. And if you have any problem, all you got to do is call us on this frequency and we will send help." Well, I was really excited. I went back and told the crew, and they cheered, and they were ready. They want to do that too. So they detached us at the proper time, and we went. What was the name of that island?
Not Hainan, but you were south of that on some of those little islands, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some of those little islands that were just off of North Vietnam.
Somewhere in the South China Sea, South China Sea.
Not Hainan. It was a big island,
It
small
was
island.
enough to have a naval force operating out of that.
Oh, not Hainan then.
No.
Too big.
It was a small island.
Small island.
Because we could go all the way around it.
Mm.
And we did that. Through our big eyes, we could actually see people walking we were that close through the big eye. You see people walking around, and they ignored us. Well,
You couldn't get them to shoot
there
back.
was my heroic opportunity.
They ignored you when you fired?
You didn't shoot. He just was trying to get them to shoot.
Oh,
Just
okay.
trying to attract them. No, I didn't fire. And we had a successful time providing gunfire support to troops ashore. The ship was very capable of firing into bunkers and stuff that mortar can't reach. A lot of things that naval guns can. And but during that time, we were supporting it in Vung Tau area, south of part of South Vietnam, and there was a task force bedded down there, and I think it was an Australian group, and they had observation planes, and we asked, they wanted to know if they could come aboard helicopters they had. They were using for, I guess, evacuation, whatever. We actually received those Australian helicopters aboard our little flight deck we had at that time.
And you didn't have a flight deck set up for a regular helo at that point. The flight deck you had was for the drone helicopter.
Yeah, but it could take
one,
manned helicopter.
but
yeah.
you couldn't house it. You could just land it.
No, we couldn't house them. But anyway, we had a lot of fun with those guys. And you know what they wanted to do when they came aboard? They wanted to go to the guidon, get cigarettes and candy and stuff like that, ice cream. And we let them take a shower and get cleaned up and visit. And we did that 2 or 3 times with them. And they were jolly happy. We had a firing accident. We were providing gunfire support on one occasion, and we had a casualty in our gun control system, a fuse or something, and we landed a explosive 5-inch shell in the middle of a village main street. They say the hole was big enough to put a good-sized automobile in it, and we did no damage other than dig a hole in the street. And the helicopter group went actually and brought pieces of shrapnel. I have a piece of it somewhere. And so I think if it had been our group, rather in the U.S. Army or something, we would have been still writing reports on it. They just brushed it off, no problem. You did the best you could, don't forget about it. Well, I like to work with them. The Belgians were pretty much the same way, laid back. We travel with them and they'd they'd transfer wine and booze to us, and we'd transfer them food to their ship. They loved our food. And we couldn't use the wine and beer at sea, but they'd send it to us on the high line. They were laid back just about like the Brits and the Australians. And what do you know, believe it or not, I finished a tour on O'Callahan after we converted to the
Yeah. That's when I ran into you, is when you came back into port, your first day back in San Diego.
You came aboard.
I'm reporting aboard.
You were waiting for we got back, weren't you?
Yeah, they wouldn't let me come. I was hoping to go join you over in at least Australia or pick it up in Vietnam, but then I would have had my feet wet by the time we got back to San Diego.
Well, that's what happened to me on a Dahlgren. It was on its way back from a deployment, and they flew me out to get on the Dahlgren to relieve as executive officer. And we went through all of the relieving process while we're coming back. And so when we came into Norfolk, I came in from a crew that had been in combat over there for 6 months or so. And the guy that I relieved didn't like me. I don't remember, he just thought that I was going to be in over my head. He thought he had it all together, I think.
I had that kind of experience myself.
Yeah, well, he didn't create any trouble for me, but you could sense, that he wasn't interested in me or anything else.
But you came on as an ops officer, right?
No.
Dahlgren?
Executive officer.
XO on the Dahlgren.
Yeah.
That's
So
right.
it was up to you to get a good turnover because he wasn't gonna make it happen.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, I bet you were a good XO.
Well, I enjoyed it, yes. And after that tour is when I went to Washington then on the OJCS with
But
my new wife, Martha.
But when you got back into port with O'Callahan and I came aboard, right after that, they sent me to some school. You sent me to some school, and then you got towed out and went up to Long Beach. I don't know if you were towed there or if you steamed up
I
there.
wasn't on there when they did that. I had been transferred,
Already?
and I was sent back I was supposed to go to the Naval War College, senior course. And the time we got back and everything, it had already started, and so they said, well, we can't get you into the Naval War College, but there's a spot for your rank at the Air War College in Montgomery.
But wait a minute. You did go to the Long Beach Naval Shipyard for some reason.
Yeah.
You were there.
Yeah, we got everything we needed because Arnie Ristad was our project engineer from the shipyard.
And he was your CO or XO on one of the other ships?
He was my XO on the No, he was my chief engineer on the Dahlgren.
And you were XO and he was chief
And
engineer.
we hit it off real good.
So you had a friend at the shipyard. Everybody wondered, how did you get everything done?
Well, what it was, he had an aircraft carrier in there at the same time, and he says, you won't believe it. He says, these people have more money than you can ever think. The commander of the Air Force of Pacific, he said, they've got more money. He says, if you want anything, they'll pay for it, if you can't afford it.
But they didn't know they were paying for it. He just took
No,
their
no,
money.
no.
He just got what you needed off of their
He
line.
charged it to them and somehow give it to us. And we got a lot done, really a lot. We had our ship's force work list. And then we had the shipyard work list. And then we had a whole bunch of things that we didn't have a way to do it. And so we took care of those things that fell out of what we needed to be done. And guess what? Arnie Ristad lives 5 miles from here.
You're kidding.
He
Still?
retired.
Isn't that awesome?
Wow.
Look, you're still working together.
Yeah, he later was promoted to captain. I went to his retirement ceremony. He was commander of the shipyard. Oh, that's near Jacksonville, Florida. There's a naval shipyard there. And that Arnie was the commander, being relieved and retired at the same time. And when that big hurricane hit down on the Gulf Coast, his house was really damaged heavily. So they decided just not to repair it, take the insurance money and move north. And they were running up and down the interstate here because his wife was a graduate of Auburn, and she was from this part of the world, and he's from Michigan. But anyway, they looked at Greenville, they looked at Auburn, and they came and spent some time with us. And they said, well, you know, we sort of like Prattville, and you're here. And they had friends in Montgomery that somehow they had friends there and said, can you help us find a place to rent for a while till we find a place we want? So I took him to a place. They rented a small, modest place, 2-bedroom place for 6 months or so. And then they found a nice home near here, 5 miles south of here.
That's just neat, isn't it?
And that's Arnie Ristad.
That's fantastic. But the thing I remember about the shipyards and you being in charge was it seemed like that you had a good stock of cigar boxes and a good stock of leather flight jackets.
I did.
And those things paid, they got things done. You knew how to operate with the system, with those union shop leaders and people.
I was
Yeah,
gonna say that, yeah.
but it seemed to work really well, got things done.
You could take a 5-pound tin of coffee and you could get a Jeep for it just about.
If you just know how. You got to have a feel for it, and you knew the system pretty well. So, but that was always impressive to me. And I remember you took a bunch of us junior officers out one day, I think on a little yard boat, to try to teach us how to drive a ship. And I got out there, and I've had this problem continuously. I would try to back down the port engine and go ahead 1/3 on the starboard engine, and I would be going back down starboard port, don't know. I would get confused.
You know, a single screw ship like the O'Callahan was far more difficult to maneuver alongside of a pier than one with twin screws, because twin screw you could twist and.
But you were stuck with the.
I think when you backed it
constant.
back to port, and if you were tied up port side too, and you all back 1/3, it would back into the port.
You couldn't get out. You had to have
what we had to do is kick it at about a 45-degree angle out by pulling ahead on holding number 2, and then come back all back standard, pick up some speed, stop the engines and put your rudder over, and that'll keep you from coming back alongside the. That's the way we had to do it. You know who taught me that? The guy who wrote the book on ship handling in a Garcia class destroyer was a CO of the Vital when I was the exec there, and he was an excellent. He came out of the Merchant Marine. He was an excellent ship handler.
Was that a single screw boat, the Vital?
He wrote the book, Ship Handling in a Garcia class destroyer.
I'll be darned.
And Vecchione, Hap Vecchione was his name. He was a 4-striper, and you remember when the ships were all sunk in the Suez Canal, and the U.S. had to go over there and clear all those ships out of the Suez. He was a task force commander selected because of his experience with the ship handling and everything, and he was on his way over there to be the on-site commander, and that was a shoo-in for flag rank if he did a good job. Well, he took off from Charleston, and they were heading to Washington, and they were to land in Charlotte, North Carolina, and they flew into the mountainside up there, killed everybody aboard.
Oh,
And my
What a-
good friend Hap Beckion, he told me one time, he said, we had really good, he said, if I make admiral, you will too.
oh darn.
I had two COs told me that, neither one of them made admiral.
Yeah, well, he probably would have, but
I think so,
he,
he had to.
he died.
And the other guy that told me that though, I never thought he was gonna make, but he told me that. But he had, later after he had command of the hull, he was the CO that put the hull in commission. He had one of those big new DLGs, bigger than the Dahlgren. And that was his, what they called a major command. And he was looking forward to a star after that, but he didn't get it. His problem was, he had trouble with being true to his home life.
Ah,
And you know, that will spread like wildfire. And if it gets to Washington and somebody, you're not gonna, if you're fooling around when you shouldn't be, and they know about it, that'll hold you back. The guy on the Dahlgren, Jim Baxter, when I went there with a CO, he was a specialist in weapons systems. Very, very smart, very bright. And he had an alcoholic problem. He and his wife were separated at the time when we reported aboard, and poor Martha, brand new bride, been married 2 weeks, became the first lady of the ship to get all the other girls together, and she didn't know the fantail from the forecastle, you know. But she had good personality, and
Oh, she
the girls
did,
took
yeah.
her under her. She was younger than most of them. She was
Yeah.
20, Martha's 28 when we got married.
and you were 45?
44.
44?
And 4 years later, we had a son. Next year, 2 years later, we had a daughter. She was born when I was 50.
And that was in 1970,
They were born in 71 and 73.
and it was in 71, I remember you had your first child
Yeah.
at about the same time, I mean, just before I came aboard, I guess.
We had our son was born. He was 2 weeks old when I left and went to San Diego, and then they flew me out to go on the O'Callahan. He was 2 weeks old, and I didn't see him till we came back from